Welcome to our Curious Amalgam, the weekly podcast brought to you by the Antitrust Law Section of the American Bar Association. Our Curious Amalgam explores the fascinating and increasingly overlapping world of competition, consumer protection, data protection, and privacy law. Each week, we bring you leading global experts on the most compelling issues of the day. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to our Curious Amalgam. I'm Alicia Downey, and the title of today's episode is Who is Tom Zych? Meet the 2022-23 chair of the ABA Antitrust Law Section. Every August, the Antitrust Law Section elevates the designated chair-elect to the position of chair. This year, Tom Zych of Cleveland, Ohio, has taken on the big job of chairing the section. Tom has specific goals and themes in mind for his one-year term, which we'll talk about more in this episode. In addition to getting to know Tom better, we'll also meet Mark Butscha, who is holding the important role of supporting Tom as counsel to the chair. My co-host today is Matt Reynolds. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Alicia.
Matt, do you want to start us off? Do you got any questions for Tom?
Sure, absolutely. So, Tom, I noticed that you're a graduate of Miami University, not the University of Miami. Maybe a question you've gotten a lot over the years. So my first question is, are you an Ohio native?
I am not. I am an Air Force brat. My father worked his 24-year career with the Strategic Air Command, so I followed B-52s around the world and grew up in a number of places, including Spain, and really happened upon Ohio because my father got a job there and went to high school about an hour south of where I live now in Cleveland, and decided to attend the Miami University.
What was your favorite place living growing up as a child in the military?
Well, I don't remember it well. I was 2 when we moved there and 5 when we left, but Madrid, Torrejon Air Force Base in Madrid in the early 1960s. I know my parents describe it glowingly as a wonderful place to have worked, other than the couple of the 13 days during the Cuban Missile Crisis where we were a little worried. But it was just a terrific place, and those are my very first memories that I think are my own memories. And enjoyed that. And certainly Western Massachusetts, where I lived for several years, was pretty pleasant. So, but I experienced all of it from inside the gates of military bases.
So we talked about high school in Ohio, college at the Miami University, and then you went to North Carolina for law school at Duke. Can you tell us a little bit, what was your path to law school? Did you go to law school right after college graduation, do anything in between?
I took a little time off. I graduated a semester early from Miami, and then because I was getting married shortly before beginning law school with eternal optimism, and I decided to work and earn a little money, even though school was more affordable then than it is today. So I worked but went right in. It was a pretty linear progression. People had for many years told me I was going to be a lawyer, and I resisted that for a long time until it made sense to me as I was graduating, and ended up, fortunately, at Duke University.
What do you think it was that made people, make that comment about your destiny to be a lawyer?
I tended to talk a lot and express opinions, even when not welcome, and people thought that was a pretty good characteristic for someone to pursue a job in this profession.
Absolutely. Well, you've clearly been very successful at it. Tell us, where did you start your career as a lawyer after law school?
You know, I'm one of those folks. I think I'm increasingly unusual. I've been in exactly one place my entire career. It was then Thompson, Hine, and Flory. It's now Thompson, Hine. I was a summer clerk in 1982, and June 6, 1983, I began a career that has changed a great deal. My firm, my affiliation has not changed, but virtually everything else has. Frankly, I'm doing things now in the profession that did not exist in the law when I was in law school. So I've been fortunate to have a home where I could make those adjustments. But formally, I've been in exactly one place my entire career.
That's really neat. Are there any cases from your early days at Thompson Hine that are particularly memorable? Speaking to the point that you're doing things that are different now than what you started out doing?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate to work on some pretty significant antitrust cases early on. My second year, we had a large merger that we worked on, an FTC 13B action, and I began working on grand jury investigations. So as an associate, I was working on criminal trials. It was just a tremendous opportunity I had to really cut my teeth and to work and to develop the skills. I spent a lot of hours sitting on a hard wooden bench outside the grand jury room, wondering what the heck the witness was actually saying for 4 hours. And so I've got pretty good memories. And then as a senior associate and young partner, got to work on a very large trade secret case, a 6.5-week trial that resulted in what was then the largest civil judgment in the Northern District. So it may be right place at the right time, but I got to work on very interesting work and largely in the antitrust realm. But then, in about the turn of the century, had the good fortune of being asked to work on a new technology practice and building out our privacy capabilities. So it's just been a series of good experiences that I feel quite fortunate to have run across.
That's an interesting evolution. Now, outside of your law practice and the ABA, we'll talk about your position as chair in just a minute. I looked at your bio. It looks like you've been very involved in a number of different community organizations. Can you tell us a little bit about that work and why? I'm sure you're a very, very busy person. Why and how the heck you carve out the time to do it?
I'll do the how first. I got some great advice from a colleague of mine, Stuart Welburn, who once told me that the key to all of this is you have to know how to edit your life. And as a lawyer, I've got a mental image of doing that with pen and paper. But the ability to make decisions and to say this comes and this goes, and that's something that I've followed. So I make time for what I enjoy doing. Alicia, you know me. You know I have virtually no artistic talent of my own. I'm married to and have raised people with great artistic talent. I have none. But I've been involved in arts organizations, and Cleveland is a vibrant arts community. So I've worked for years with our International Film Festival. I've worked with the Cleveland School of the Arts, the public school that's arts-infused education. Gotten to work with other musical and performing arts performance and educational institutions. And I've really enjoyed it. It's very rewarding. I work with, I get to be around the kids at the School of the Arts, and it's like fame in real life. The movie come to life. And just being around that much youthful energy and amazing talent, you just can't help but walk away from that feeling better and being invigorated. So it's a commitment of time, but I get so much out of it. And, when I do teaching or other things, it's just, I've got no problem with just having downtime, but the things that I can do outside of the office really invigorate me. And I can't imagine, especially living in a town like this, not being involved.
Well, those organizations are lucky to have you, as is the Antitrust Law Section. So turning to your term, this has been years in the making as you've climbed the leadership ladder, and now you're finally at the top. What are your goals for this year?
There's a few. There's a lot. Start with this one. We've been around as a section about 70 years, and we're a very successful section. We do things great, and it's been a lot of work that's done. So I think just as what Jonathan Gleckland would have said last year is I've got to make sure that I can manage the continuity of what we're doing. We've got an incredible staff, and I want to make sure they're supported. And all the things we do year to year, we continue. But in terms of what, the focus, and really for my year as vice chair and planning and last year and going to this, is that I want to make sure that in all that we do, we measure and maximize the actual impact we have, right? Boiled down to what we do two things. We serve our members, and we positively impact antitrust, competition, data privacy, law practice, and policy. So what do we do? And the phrase we've been using for shorthand for all of this is moving the needle. How do we ensure that whatever we do has a real impact, that our programs do that our publications do that we provide service to our members that they can use? That's why we've invested in our website, and where we're working very hard on that. And our critical, what we're going to spend a great deal of time on, and I hope it's every day, is working on our DEI initiatives. We spent a lot of time in Santa Fe at the Leadership Summit on that. We've been communicating about it. We've been learning, doing our best. And that is something that's going to be critical. We're at a real inflection point working with the new diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that we're getting finalized and rolling out that we have through Counsel, and we're socializing through the organization. That's going to be very important because, Alicia, it goes to something you've said about the many years on the ladder. One thing we're cognizant of, and if I can go on just a bit about this, is we reward hard work with more work. And so the leaders in the section, all of those, and not just the top leaders, everyone, you folks included, have worked very hard, and we want that to be recognized and rewarded. But we also don't want to look at young members and say, well, 20 years from now, this could be yours too, right? We think that doesn't help our DEI initiatives, doesn't help us round ourselves out the way we want to be. So what we're going to be spending time looking at is identifying and supporting younger and newer leaders who are going to be the future, and make sure that future isn't a quarter century away. And Steve Cernak and Fiona Schaefer have been working on this as well. So it's a wide range of things, all realizing that a year goes pretty quickly. And so I've got to be pretty focused on any of these.
No, you're right. Time does fly when you're having fun. What, though, if you could identify one thing coming up this year, what are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to a fully in-person year. And Brian and Gary and John, had to manage through the COVID experience in different ways when none of us saw each other, and we're getting back. So what I want to do is to maximize the fact that the fellowship that the section offers really is taken advantage of. We're going to be safe. We're going to be thoughtful. We're going to respect and recognize that people gather and consume things differently these days, that COVID has changed things. But I really want to focus on the people aspect, and all the things we want to be able to do are really meant to help human beings, and we're less institutional about it. So I think that is one thing that I'm really would like to do, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but because we want to do that domestically, we want to do it internationally. We're going to be going to cities around the world, but I think it really is to take full advantage of all the assets we have and really make sure the person-to-person part of this association really is maximized.
Yeah, well, knowing you, Tom, I'm not surprised by that answer, because that is really your superpower, as they say, which is making those personal connections. Before we went on the air, Matt was telling us about how you were a friendly face to him as a new person. Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was my first post-annual meeting that I attended, and as you know, we have a reception for new members of leadership, and I remember engaging in a very nice conversation with Tom, and I came away from that conversation and that reception really feeling genuinely welcomed. I've always really enjoyed my participation in the section, but moving up into leadership, it was a very welcoming thing to be able to have that conversation with someone who was obviously a senior statesman of the antitrust bar. We've talked a lot. We appreciate this discussion about the really admirable goals that you have for the section for the coming year. If we can shift the focus a little bit, sort of external to the section, can you give us your sense of what legal trends you think might have the greatest impact on section members in the year ahead?
In terms of the trends that are going to be affecting us, let me do this in a certain order. If we can do what the Commission would call the Bureau of Consumer Protection side of it, I think we're seeing, and the news just broke today, and I'm not going to make comment on it. I'm not sure I can yet. But when we got the Commission undertaking an enforcement action against someone for selling geolocation data, we have a significant legal development, an enforcement priority, that at the same time, every single person listening to this is going to get a catch in their throat when they think of all the geolocation data that someone could sell about them. So I think what we're seeing is that the issues are hitting us in a way that's less academic. And I think it's similar to what the division and the commission are doing. They'll call it democratizing their outlook. And I think it's helpful for us to get all of our heads around that we are less wonkish. We're lawyers, we're economists, we're professionals. That's going to be our frame on this. But in terms of, if you look at the poultry cases, I don't know about you, I eat chicken and I love chicken wings. So I'm going to understand what those markets really mean in a way. I'm an older guy, so the pharmaceutical markets matter to me. And so I think watching those approaches develop, which is different than when I started in the section in the 1980s and what the emphases were. So I think you look at the Bureau of Competition, you look at the way the division is going. And I think the other perspective is it's a much different way of looking at the international aspects. What the section used to do is give technical advice to the rest of the world, right? We helped Afghanistan, that is the former Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, write its first consumer protection law. We were out there spreading a gospel. Now it's interactive. what CAGE does in Brazil is going to impact us. It's not just because we're giving them lectures. So I think seeing that those directions intersect with each other, and then I don't know if democratization is the right word, but the way we open up perspectives to what's relevant to our analyses, I think those are going to touch everything and are going to impact some of the individual disciplinary questions we may have.
So it's really more of a commonwealth of ideas now, much more so than, as you said, sort of spreading the gospel in years past.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's another domestically as well. And we're trying to pay attention. And one of the things you talked about, points of emphasis, we're really working hard to make sure that at all levels, including all levels in the leadership, that we've got different perspectives, that we're hearing all the perspectives. It may not change a comment that we write, but at least we're going to be informed by people who don't have someone like me who spent 40 years in the private bar.
I wanted to ask you as well, can you say, is there one particular aspect of the antitrust section that you think of as being really the best thing about the section from your perspective, whether historically or today?
Yeah, I think our programs and meetings, we're odd in the ABA in that we do not accept sponsorship for them. We are Switzerland. We are open. I used to say we're Switzerland. It may not be the best example, but we are neutral territory in our programming, and I don't think anyone matches what we do. And certainly, I'll say this with pride, earned or not, I don't think anyone's got our spring meeting. Anyone does anything like our spring meeting. So I think our programming and I think our underappreciated assets, things like our journal and our other publications, as well as, and I'll return to it, providing an opportunity for all of us to gather and to get to know each other in what's going to be a pretty contested profession.
You've commented, and I think all of us on this discussion today really agree that the Antitrust Law Section does a lot of things very well, and it has done so very well for decades now. But that said, are there specific things that you are looking to change or improve specifically in the coming ABA year?
I don't know if it's improved, but it's something that I have to pay attention to constantly, and that is our professional staff. I mean, I can tell you now from firsthand experience, literally nothing gets done in this section without the contribution of our professional staff. Maintaining that in a challenging professional association environment is something that needs to be done. And the traditional ways of look, everybody is in this boat, right, in terms of talent retention and developing your personal assets, your talent. And so I think that is something we're going to spend a lot of time with. And thank God we've got a talented and very frank staff. We can make sure that we are providing the support in a world that's really changed. So I think that's something that we've got to be in leadership pretty mindful of. What do we have to do differently to maintain to support the same excellence in our staff?
Well, speaking of support, you as the chair also enjoy the support of a junior colleague who holds the role of counsel to the chair, and we'll find out a little bit more about what that entails. First, I want to welcome to the program Mark Butscha, who is Tom's colleague at the law firm of Thompson, Hine. Mark, welcome to our Curious Amalgam.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your practice? How many years have you been a lawyer, and has it evolved to the same degree as Tom's has, or have you been kind of doing the same thing all along?
Sure. It has evolved a little bit. I've been at Thompson Hine now for 10 years. I had a clerkship before that at the Court of Appeals in Albany, New York, and then came back to Ohio, where I'm from originally. But my practice initially focused more on litigation of all sorts, and after a couple of years, changed a little bit to focus more on antitrust issues. Now my practice focuses on merger control, including HSR and investigations, as well as litigation and counseling, with the balance still focused on general complex litigation as well.
Okay, and you also now have a part-time job as counsel to the chair, and even I'm not sure what all of that entails. What's your job description?
Simply put, I think I view my role as just supporting Tom so that he can support the section and its members the best that he can. I helped Tom with the appointments process, which was extensive, and just really helping him with whatever kind of initiatives he needs. But I would say to any members that are listening to this, if you have questions or need information about anything, and maybe you don't want to reach out to Tom directly, or you would like to reach out to Tom directly but don't want to right at that moment, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help any way that I can.
Sounds like a 24-hour job at some points, huh?
I don't know about 24, but it certainly is a lot of work. It's been very rewarding. I'm learning a lot, meeting a lot of people. So it's been really a great experience so far.
And what are you most looking forward to in the coming year?
I would say Tom mentioned being back in person, and I agree with that. I think that spring meeting is what I look forward to the most, because you get to catch up with a lot of people, many of whom you hadn't seen since perhaps the last spring meeting, and meeting a lot of new people. In addition to that, I'm interested to see what sort of technology initiatives come to fruition this year. There's a lot of talk in the section about delivering content to members and maintaining influence, not only in the profession, but in the public debate about antitrust, consumer protection, and data privacy. And I'm interested to see what comes of that as well.
I'm going to ask you to spill the tea a little bit. How would you describe Tom's leadership style?
I would describe Tom as hands-off. Tom knows, and he does say it a lot, that he knows the section is filled with a lot of talented, creative people with lots of ideas, and he trusts them to pursue those ideas and projects without micromanaging them. So he certainly has his own ideas, but also recognizes that others do, and he wants those all to be put into action if people are willing to do the work to do it.
Now, switching gears as we head into the final minutes of the episode, a little something that we do with every guest is to ask them to tell us something interesting about themselves that is outside of their professional life. So why don't we start with you, Tom?
This is the things people don't know about me that might surprise them, I think, segment.
Well, okay. Yes, surprise, if not shock, but go ahead.
Okay. Two things. One, we all have avocations, and people know I'm a golfer, but what I'm not sure a lot of people know is one of my other avocations is I teach biblical theology on a regular basis as an amateur, but it's something I find interesting and fulfilling. So it's one of my teaching gigs. The other thing about me is, and I did this and left almost no trace, but did leave a trace. In 2004, I ran, obviously unsuccessfully, for President of the United States. And the evidence you will find of that is there are filings on the website of the Federal Election Commission for that election. And if you dig hard enough, you can get to the Secretary of State of Ohio, who had to record every vote, including those cast in favor of, as I was, a certified write-in candidate. And some people take the word certified to mean various things, and maybe certifiable was the other word. So those are something I think very few people know about it. And obviously, I never became an occupant of the White House.
No, but imagine how the tide of history would have turned if you had. Mark, tell us something interesting about yourself.
Well, I'll leave it to others to decide whether it's interesting or not, but something that people might not know about me is that in my free time, I do like to play guitar, which I started teaching myself about 25 years ago, and I continue to teach myself today when I do find a free moment to do so.
Okay.
Acoustic or electric?
Acoustic. I've only got an acoustic at the moment.
Do you play fingerstyle or with a pick?
A little bit of both.
Oh, neat.
A little bit of both. And oftentimes now I am trying to find a quiet spot to do it without my 2-year-old's fingers getting in there too.
Are there any YouTube videos or other places where we can hear your music recordings?
No, I wouldn't say that I record. It's more like playing for my own benefit.
Thanks, guys, for telling us these interesting things about yourselves. Now, for the final segment of the episode, we're going to play The Curious Hat.
And now it's time for The Curious Hat!
So, the question that we have randomly selected for you both to answer today is, when you were a young child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I remember distinctly as a child wanting to be the Pope. I'm not sure how long that ambition lasted. it was not a lifestyle that it would turn out to be amenable for me. But I do remember thinking that it would be pretty awesome to be the Pope.
Wow,
was it a
Pope?
sequential thought? First priest, then bishop, then cardinal, then pope, or just straight up to pope?
Oh no, that was a level of presumption and unreality that went right to the top. I think Pope would be cool.
And Mark, how about you? When you were a young child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I don't know if this was more or less unrealistic than wanting to be the Pope, but when I was probably, by the time I was 8 years old, from the time I was 8 until I was about 12, I just wanted to be Dan Marino and to be a quarterback in the NFL. That later changed, but there were a few years there where I really thought that was the way my life was going to go.
Well, there definitely are more quarterbacks in the NFL than there are popes at any given time. So
yeah, the observation I'll make is that you guys are somewhat far removed from your childhood ambitions, but you're both doing really great work for the section. We appreciate you very much. We're excited to see what you do this year. Thank you so much for being on our Curious Amalgam.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody listening, tune in to next week's episode.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of our Curious Amalgam, a competition, consumer protection, data protection, and privacy law podcast. It is produced and shared around the globe by ABA's Antitrust Law Section. The opinions expressed by the participants in this podcast are their own and do not necessarily represent their employer or other organizations. If you like what you heard or would like to become a member of the American Bar Association, please check out what the Antitrust section has to offer at ambar.org/antitrust. You can learn more about our podcast at ourcuriousamalgam.com. If you have comments, suggestions, or podcast ideas, please reach out to us at podcast@ourcuriousamalgam.com. Until next time, thank you for listening.